What if your company's data model wasn't just a static repository, but a living, breathing system of intelligence? One that could think, adapt, and scale alongside your business. Well, my guest today is Christian Buckner, and he's building exactly that at Altair, which is now part of Siemens. And with a backdrop of knowledge graphs, AI agents, and Siemens-sized upgrade to their capabilities, Christian is reimagining how enterprises operationalize AI without needing to rip and replace everything that they've already built. So today we'll talk about the real power of AI fabric, why knowledge graphs are much more than a buzzword, and how to avoid getting lost in that dreaded pilot purgatory. And Christian also shares his own hands-on learning habits, why building a deck isn't so different from building an AI agent, and what it means to onboard technology the exact same way we onboard humans. Let's not overcomplicate things here. Now, before we get started today, a quick thank you to today's sponsor, Careerist. And if you've ever thought, I'd love to pivot into a career in tech, but I just don't know how to code, then this is for you, because Careerist QA Bootcamp is actually one of the most accessible ways to break into a tech career. You'll get live training from experts at companies like Google and Meta, a remote internship that you can put on your resume, and a one-on-one career coaching to help you actually land the job of your dreams. And the demand is huge too. There are over 37,000 QA openings in the US alone right now, with starting salaries of up to $105,000. And graduates are working in 42 different states, and the program is rated 4.7 stars on Trustpilot. And best of all, if you don't get hired within a year, you get your tuition fees back. Seems like win-win to me. But the only catch is the seat for the next cohort are closing soon. That's why I'm working with Careerist to get the message out. So please check the link in the show notes to grab your spot. And now, let's get today's conversation started with my guest. So thank you for joining me on the podcast today, Christian. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. So my name is Christian Buckner, and I lead the development and engineering and product management teams for the data portfolio of products at Altair, recently acquired by Siemens. And my job is really to further the data initiatives that we have at Altair and put us in a good place.
Yeah, and you're going through quite an exciting time at the moment. And for people hearing about Altair for the very first time, and indeed your Altair's AI fabric, tell me a little bit more about it, how it's helping businesses scale AI across so many different functions and workflows, because it is a big talking point right now. So many businesses chasing AI for so many different reasons. So tell me a little bit more about some of the problems that you're solving there with this tech.
For sure. So an AI fabric borrows a lot of the same elements that a data fabric has. And so it fits across an enterprise's data and helps to harmonize data across sources, from enterprise systems to databases to data warehouses, and then creates a model of that data that is then kind of a single pane of glass for an organization's analytics tools and an organization's people. An AI fabric, though, goes a step further in integrating AI into that model, because in the future, and increasingly in the organizations that we're seeing, AI is playing a critical role in that data model that makes up a business. So you would see AI as a key actor within the data model itself. And when you inject AI into this universal model, it can become kind of a living, breathing thing. You know, the agents will learn from each other. They'll learn from the enterprise data. They'll write and read. And in that way, this AI fabric then becomes kind of a central operating system or system of intelligence for organizations. And we're seeing this paradigm playing out in real time in organizations today. It's very interesting and very exciting. Altair really provides a set of tools for building this. And so AI fabric is something that we've helped organizations build, but it isn't necessarily Altair's AI fabric. It's something that organizations take on for themselves, because it should be opinionated about how that organization works and not something that's from a vendor, so to speak. What we do is we just try to provide accelerators to get to that point where an organization can have that central system of intelligence that helps to run businesses, accelerate businesses, and inject AI into daily operations.
And over the last few years, everyone's been talking about Gen AI, but of course, since Gartner predicted last year correctly that 2025 would be the year all around agentic AI and AI agents. And as a result, this year, all anyone's been talking about is AI agents generating a lot of attention across just about every industry. But how are you approaching this space, and what are the risks of deploying agents before the infrastructure and oversight are ready? And the reason I ask that is it's easy to get carried away and distracted or excited by the technology and go headfirst in and make a few mistakes. So hopefully we can prevent businesses from making those mistakes today. So what are the dangers or risks from doing it before that infrastructure is ready?
Yeah, I think the AI agents are certainly very exciting. They offer a lot of promise to organizations, and honestly, with the proliferation of technology out there, it's very easy to get started with AI agents. I think you can pick up a Python library. Anybody with a little bit of coding skills can pick up a Python library and get going. I think the objective for organizations, though, shouldn't be to have a couple of POCs with agents that have just started off. It should be to integrate agents and generative AI deeply into business processes, making critical decisions and automating critical processes. And in order to do that, I think you need a platform, something that is a little bit more foundational to govern and control this increasingly large swarm of agents. And what we provide is this platform that puts in place a centralized a technology for governing, controlling, and enabling agents to work within a business environment in a safe and controlled way. So it has things like monitoring and auditability, so you can see what an agent has done in the past. It has things like evaluation, so that you can constantly monitor that the actions that the agents are taking are in the best interest of the business and the way that they were originally designed. It has all the tools that you would need to make sure that it's running efficiently and not breaking the bank with cloud resources. And these are the concerns that you would have when you go beyond a POC or proof of value state, where you really want to make sure that it's going to work long term. And so it's that central foundation that we're interested in providing and integrating into the business's organizational processes.
And one of the things that I find exciting is how we're lowering the barrier of entry to some of these complex technologies. So from your view here, how can generative AI help non-technical users interact with complex data, especially through, I don't know, natural language queries or AI pilots? It feels like a real unique opportunity here from previous trends.
Yeah, I think generative AI it's not just an opportunity for automating, but it becomes a great partner for people who are looking to interrogate their data. And so it's something where you can ask dumb questions, any question you want, questions without fear of looking like you're stupid. You can continuously work with a generative AI model and agent and ask, in deep questions about an organization's data. And increasingly that's possible when you have that foundation that integrates an organization's data into a single model through this thing called a knowledge graph and through the AI fabric concept that we were talking about. And I think that's really important because before the concept was you needed to build enterprise reports, you needed to be prescriptive about the insights that you can provide to your organization. But with the generative AI model, you can dive in to a wide variety of topics and get information on a wide variety of topics. And it doesn't have to be so prescriptive. And in that way, it can be much more interesting with the outputs that it provides. And so I think that's really important because it means people will move faster in their daily jobs and act with more informed and make more informed decisions.
And when I was doing a little research, I quickly learned that you've worked with some pretty big players out there. From Nielsen is a great example to detect emerging trends from unstructured data. So how are companies integrating AI into analytics without compromising on insights or data privacy? These are the kind of things that business leaders listening will want to know. And I don't expect you to name any names, but is there anything you can share around that and the work you're doing?
Well, generative AI is a key part of what we're doing today, but I think it's also important to recognize the value in more mundane automation and more mundane technologies. I mean, just having simple automation for data entry, for example, can be a huge difference maker for organizations. Taking information out of a core business system or core banking system and putting it into an Excel spreadsheet is not particularly interesting to the outside world and to the media, but that's something that can save millions or tens of millions of dollars for an organization. And we do a lot of different things across that spectrum of technology. So we have technology for implementing basic heuristics and rules-based automation, for implementing traditional machine learning, and for implementing generative AI. And across that spectrum, we see all sorts of use cases. We've seen at a major petrochemical company, for example, we saw them reducing their downtime globally by 20 to 30%. And that's a huge benefit and cost savings for them. We saw a global transportation company, implement dynamic pricing. And then that immediately resulted in I think it was a $50 million increase in revenues in year one. And we're anticipating a $100 million increase in revenues in year two. And that was just a traditional machine learning model use case. Another organization we saw implement a knowledge graph for drug discovery and for interaction analysis and clinical operations. And they were able to save analysis time, just speeding up analysis time. And they estimated that saved them $17 million. And so, the opportunity here really runs the gamut. And I wouldn't limit yourself to just being interested in generative AI for automation. I think that's what everybody's talking about. But smart organizations will use the right tool for the job. And generative AI is great for a lot of things, but it's also expensive and resource hungry for a lot of things. You can use basic traditional machine learning, or you can use basic heuristics-based automation to get huge gains. I think it's important that you establish a foundation that can do all of those things so that you can, again, choose the right tool for the job.
And I'm really glad that you mentioned knowledge graphs there. It's something I'm hearing more and more about on this podcast. And what I also loved about the example you provided was it's showing real tangible benefits, ROI, solving real problems. So in your view, what role does knowledge graphs play in turning things like raw data into strategic insights, especially for complex industries like the healthcare example that you offered there?
Sure. So I think I mentioned data fabric earlier, and it is possible to create a data fabric without using a knowledge graph. So you can create a model that doesn't have that graph element to it. But I think increasingly going forward, knowledge graphs are going to play a critical role in building that central data model for an organization's enterprise data. And the reason that I think that knowledge graphs in particular are so important is that generative AI, and this is maybe going to make data scientists puke a little bit, but generative AI thinks a little bit more like humans than traditional machine learning or traditional data analytics does, meaning that it understands relationships, it understands concepts, it understands blocks of text much better than rows and columns of data. And a knowledge graph represents an organization's data in a format that a generative AI model in particular can work with much more intuitively, because it highlights relationships between data that wouldn't be possible to explore or explain in traditional data architectures. And so a knowledge graph, I think, is, for lack of a better word, becomes the brain of a generative AI and agentic organization. It holds the data, but also holds the relationships between the data points and holds it in a way that generative AI models can understand. Instead of having 17 tables in your general ledger and in your ERP and in your CRM that have what are basically all sales data, you can have a node in a knowledge graph that it's literally just sales. And then, instead of a generative AI model having to go through and sort through 17 tables that are maybe labeled with, by some data engineer 15 years ago that only he understands or she understands, now you have a node in a graph that says sales that a generative AI model or a person can understand much more easily. And then you're able to extract insights much more easily and able to do automation much more easily. And so in the end, I think generative AI and knowledge graph are linked together. And I think knowledge graph in particular becomes the center of an agentic ecosystem.
And we've mentioned healthcare, and Altair's clients span everything from automotive to finance. And that was one of the things that interested me and wanted to get you on the podcast today, because you're serving so many different industries here. But I'm curious, when you look at all these different clients across so many different industries, what are the common challenges that they're all facing when it comes to operationalizing AI? Because we're hearing a lot of stories of a lot of businesses that went headfirst into AI, but now they're struggling with a lot of projects that are stuck in pilot phase. So what are some of the most common challenges that you're seeing there?
I think one that we talked about earlier is central governance of AI, making sure that you can trust the AI that you deploy. I mean, there's a difference between being interested and starting a pilot and growing a skill set and actually having it make decisions for your organization. And I think there's that big gap there is trust. I also think that there's a gap in the gap in skills. It's the market is moving so quickly right now that it's impossible for the people who are actually building these systems to always keep up with the latest and the greatest technology that exists. And then their jobs become this constant system architecture as opposed to development of end tasks. And so I think that central gap exists in when you're trying to go from pilot to production. You want to be able to build something that is already integrated into the system and not have to build the system from the get-go. I also think that there's also the speed element. I mean, everybody's racing to keep up with what's going on with their competitors, and the competitors are all saying they're already agentic and they already have all these things in there. I don't know how many organizations actually have integrated agents at scale. We have a few organizations and customers, obviously, but it's still early days for a lot of organizations, and just being able to have the right tools in place to accelerate that process. And in particular, we see low code as a huge accelerator for agentic development is important for organizations. So just to summarize, I think there's a skills gap. I think there's a governance and trust issue. And I think that there's a speed and a speed of action issue. And I think if you can overcome those things, then you're able to get to the end goal of having agentic AI orchestrating and automating pieces of your business. And I think our objective as an organization, as a technology organization, as a platform, is to provide the tools that overcome those gaps, to provide the tools that overcome the trust gap, to provide the tools that help you move faster, and to provide tools that upskill and enable you to integrate into a system that already exists, putting the onus on us to keep up with the latest in technology, and then enabling you to develop the projects that actually create an impact for your organization. Instead of being a system architect, you then can be a data scientist or a data developer. And so I think if you can, like I said, if you can solve those things, you get to the end a lot faster.
And in your introduction on today's podcast, you also mentioned the acquisition by Siemens and integration into Siemens Accelerator. So how do you see Altair's role evolving in shaping the next phase of industrial AI with this as well? How do you see all this taking shape?
Well, I think Siemens presents, and this is my personal opinion, but I think Siemens represents a huge opportunity for Altair RapidMiner in particular. I mean, there's 180 years of experience and in industry in Siemens. There's a deep set of technology already, and it's already used by, I think, 60,000 organizations around the world for deep technical tasks in engineering and product lifecycle management and simulation and in operations and manufacturing. And being able to be an analytics layer that hooks into those deeply, into those core systems of record deeply, I think presents an opportunity for organizations to continue what they're doing today and doing it very well, and then add that next element of agents and AI and becoming an AI company without having to break everything down and replatform and redo everything that they've already done. And I think that in itself means, again, people are able to move faster towards their end goal of being an AI organization or an AI enterprise. Instead of having to have a huge project, you can get there just by implementing the right foundation.
And looking ahead, how do you see AI fabric or data fabric, some of the things we've been talking about today, how do you see these things changing the way that enterprises will approach product innovation and even operational efficiency? Because as you said, at the moment, it's very early days. We're playing with these things and creating value little by little. But what's the long game here? How do you see that evolving?
Well, I think the way that organizations will start to think about operations will change over time. And I think that the way that it'll change is by thinking of technology and agents and generative AI as a first-class citizen or equal partner in operations to even humans or people, And in order to accomplish that, you need to have the infrastructure and the systems to be able to onboard that technology effectively and trust it. The same way that we have technology, or we have systems and infrastructure to onboard people. There's HR, there's an onboarding process. There's all these things that you have in place in organizations today to onboard people. You need to have that same foundation in order to onboard agents. And I think people will increasingly add that foundation and that infrastructure to be able to do it. And I think there are key elements of that. I think you need to be able to get them up to speed very quickly on the enterprise context. So that includes things like a data fabric and that unified data model. I think it's being able to trust them and track them and make sure they're not being bad actors within the system. The same as a lot of organizations need to track employees to make sure employees are being bad actors. Right? You need to be able to trust that these things are working, and especially true for agents because they're going to work 24/7. They're going to work across every time zone. They're going to work behind the scenes. And sometimes if you're not able to see what they're doing, then you're not 100% sure that they're doing the right things. And so all these things are important to build into this infrastructure. And I think if you can build that infrastructure, though, I think, again, organizations will see their operations different. I think they'll be able to move faster. Each person, there's a concept in software development called a 10x developer. And I think what we'll start to see are 10x process engineers and 10x HR reps and 10x marketing reps. And that means, and that's because of generative AI and agents and the people and these technologies that will support them in their roles, because then those people become much, much, much more effective in the jobs that they have today. And so, again, I think the way that people will think about it will change, but I think maybe the subtext there is, will this replace people? And I don't think it will end up replacing people. I think what humans have continuously done throughout history is do more, right? And I think with the addition of this technology, we're not going to do the same amount with fewer people. We're going to do more with the same amount of people and just adding this technology on top. And so I think it's a huge benefit for society and for organizations to implement these things, because that just means we're able to move faster as humanity, and each organization is able to move faster. And I think that, and that just means a change in thought process for operations.
And it's so refreshing to hear a much more positive take on that look into the future. And on a personal note, there's a real pressure on all of us to be in a state of continuous learning. And I suspect you must feel this pressure more than most, because you're someone that's leading the way. So a question I've got to ask on behalf of everyone listening is, where or how do you self-educate? How do you keep up to speed with this pace of change?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of reading and a lot of YouTube and a lot of learning from peers and experts and all those things. But I think the best way to self-educate is really to dive in. I learn about the agentic and generative AI IDEs by using them. So I use Cursor, and I use Windsurf and Lovable, and I learn about these things by actually implementing POC projects on my own. I learn how to build a deck by going out and building a deck and messing it up a little bit and changing it and learning and going on YouTube and figuring out what I did wrong. It's the same thing. I learned how to swing a golf club by trying and actually swinging a golf club. So I think in order to expand horizons, you can't be afraid to fail, and you have to go out and actually try things and get your hands dirty a little bit. And so that's what I try to do is get my hands dirty and really try to implement what I'm trying to learn in practice and fail a little bit and then get better.
Fantastic advice. And for anyone listening, inspired by our conversation, maybe they just want to find out more information about Altair and the products we mentioned today, where would you like to point everyone?
Sure. So, of course, you can visit us at altair.com, and there is a page for AI Fabric in particular, altair.com/AI Fabric. I think you can visit there and learn all about it. But, of course, you can also reach out to us at any time and if you have particular questions.
Awesome. Well, I'll add links to everything, including AI Fabric. I think that's the big headline grabber that people are going to be wanting to find out more about. I encourage everyone listening to check that out. But just thank you for talking about it in a language everyone can understand and really helping bringing it to life today. Really appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you. Thanks again for having me. It's been great.
What I love most about that conversation was just how grounded it was. Amid all the noise about AI disruption, I think Christian reminded us that success doesn't come from chasing shiny tools, but from building the right foundations. And those foundations are data that you can trust, systems that you understand, and agents that know when to act and when to ask. So hopefully today's episode made you think a little bit about how your business is preparing to scale AI responsibly, or alternatively, if you've got your own stories of pilot projects that never quite took off, I'd love to hear your lessons learned. So how are you thinking about the role of AI agents in your organization? How do you see them as partners, replacements, or maybe something entirely different? Please drop me a message. Let's keep this conversation going. techtalksnetwork.com, techblogwriter.co.uk, DM me on any social channel at Neil C. Hughes. Nice and easy to find. But that's it for today. So thank you for listening as always, and I'll speak with you all again very soon. Bye for now.